The Los Angeles Rams top the New Orleans Saints on Thursday Night Football, get Week 16 ready, led by 2 fifth-round picks. We're going to dive into all of that and every other game in Week 16 coming up next on Locked On NFL.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, everybody, to your Friday episode of Locked On NFL, your daily podcast covering the National Football League, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for making Locked On NFL your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget that you can subscribe to this show for free on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this podcast. I'm David Harrison, on Twitter at dharrison82, host of Locked On Commanders, Locked On Bucks, credential member of the media covering both of those teams for Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation. He is Tony Wiggins, on Twitter at Shop Talking Wig, host of Locked On Jags with over 10 years of experience covering Duval's finest. Locked On NFL is here with you every Monday through Friday, along with our everydayers. And as always, we appreciate your continued support for this and all your favorite Locked On programs. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use the promo code, all lowercase, Locked On NFL, for a first deposit match up to $100. Wig, we are going to predict all of the Week 16 matchups coming up. But before we get to that, we got to talk about the Los Angeles Rams winning at home 30-22. And I think the story of this game is going to be the fifth-round picks, Puka Nacua, Kyren Williams, helping lead the Saints, helping lead the Rams to victory. The Saints were wishing they were helping them lead to victory. But before we get to that, I do want to talk about the fact this is 2 weeks in a row now. We've seen the Los Angeles Rams walk away, home game, 8-point win. In the stat box, it looks like a closer victory than it looked like in the course of the game, because at the end of the game, the Los Angeles Rams allow another opponent to get back into the game, make it a little bit more interesting than it had to be. Now, the Rams are currently holding an NFC playoff spot, so that's the good news. Are you concerned? Rams, Saints, Jaguars, doesn't matter what team it is. Are you concerned if your team is starting to get good leads in games, but also let teams back in towards the end of it when you're looking at playoff football right down the road?
I'm not too much concerned, especially when it comes to the Rams, because they're so inexperienced. I think that comes with experience. And I also think that comes with coaching, the game plan, and how to make sure the guys know how to finish. But I'm really, really impressed. I'm more impressed by the Rams because I think about 12 months ago, I said they probably had the worst roster in the NFL because they were purging it and they were getting rid of people. They traded Jalen Ramsey off, got some stuff. They didn't have a whole bunch of first-round picks because of a lot of the things that they went out and did. And Les Snead has found a way to rebuild the offensive line, get enough people around Matthew Stafford, get Matthew Stafford healthy. Of course, he didn't have anything to do with that, but it's just like Cooper Kupp tore his Achilles, and then all of a sudden they get Cooper Kupp part 2 with Puka Nacua. You know what I'm saying? So for me, it's like I thought that they were going to be a team at this point that would start like trading off assets like Aaron Donald. And man, they found a way to get themselves into playoff contention, and they have actually become what a lot of teams want. And that is, no matter what happens, no matter what we have to do personnel-wise, that they are always going to be relevant. And that is a credit to that organization and Les Snead. And need I say Sean McVay might be. We thought that last year he was going to be coaching his last season because he might have gone into TV. They are actually the biggest surprise, and I think Sean McVay is the coach of the year, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's got a valid case. You know what I mean? He's got his team at 8-7, and I think that team. We always say that you are what your record says you are, but like you said, I think experience has a lot to do with it. Cooper Kupp being out to begin the season has a lot to do with it, and that strategy the Los Angeles Rams had to go get that Super Bowl, right? Trade all your picks, trade your future, worry about today, worry about right now, go get a Lombardi. They did it, and everybody said, okay, you got your Lombardi, but now enjoy the next 5, 6, 7 years of mediocrity, because your lack of draft picks is going to come back to bite you. Instead, they're using 2 fifth-round picks here. Kyren Williams, Puka Nacua. Kyren finishes with 22 touches, 104 yards on the day. Puka Nacua, 9 catches, 164 yards. I mean, this man has literally right down the middle. He had half of Matthew Stafford's passing yards on the night and half of his touchdown total. Matt Stafford throwing for 2 touchdowns, 5th-round picks. You got teams out there who've got 10, 11 first-round picks playing for their rosters. They can't put together these kinds of games, and the Los Angeles Rams are doing it with 5th-rounders. Now, on the New Orleans Saints side of things, with Derek Carr, 319 yards, 3 touchdowns, and interception. Looks good if it's your fantasy team and you're in the playoffs. Chris Olave, 9 catches, 123. Again, good for fantasy. But Alvin Kamara, 9 touches, 19 yards, 5 catches, 16 yards. That's a total of 14 touches for less than 50 yards from Alvin Kamara, one of the best running backs in the National Football League by reputation. The Los Angeles Rams clearly came in with a plan to stop him. Where do you look at the Saints right now as far as where they're going with their future?
Well, they're an absolute mess, and the reason why I say that is because they're not going to have any salary cap space. They've done. I think that at some point they went for it, and then they also committed a lot of money to Derek Carr. Derek Carr statistically can put up whatever numbers he wants to, but I don't think there's a person in the world that thinks that he'll ever lead them to the Super Bowl, because I think he's a horrible leader. And I was one of those people that was in the Derek Carr fan when he came out of Fresno State, and then when he eventually went to the Rams and had them sitting there at like 12-3 before he got hurt, and I was like, just give him a chance. But we have seen him yelling at teammates early in the year. The leadership is just not there, right? They have great players on defense at every level on the defensive line as well as linebacker. And then when you look at the defensive backs, they, to me, they are just a team that has a team building problem right now. And they're not going to be a team in the future that's going to do anything well because of the salary cap situation. So I am a firm believer in team building. I'm a firm believer in, making sure that you take care of the future while you're in the present. And I don't think the Rams have done the Saints have done a good job of that. They are the antithesis of Rams. Les Snead traded all those picks, traded all those great players. And then what did he do? I think he did it because he knows we'll find guys that can play in our system. We know who we are, and we know the kind of players that we want to get to bring here. And they have done a real, real good job of that. And it is, to me, the biggest surprise combined with this game tonight was the biggest surprise combined with the biggest disappointment in the National Football League.
That's a valid take on it. I think the New Orleans Saints, by most accounts, were expected to win the NFC South. The real competition was supposed to be for who's going to be second best and see if maybe the Buccaneers could make it happen. Derek Carr was supposed to be the best quarterback in the NFC South. The Saints were supposed to have the best defense in the NFC South, and that whole thing was supposed to come together. Not that anybody expected the NFC South leaders to be a 10, 11, 12 win team, but you definitely expected the New Orleans Saints to really kind of rise to the top there. And it's funny because Sean McVay, last offseason when those stories broke that he was thinking about walking away, everybody said, oh, man, you're going to trade all those picks and get that Lombardi and then walk away and leave him holding the bag with somebody new. Well, it turns out that that's not at all what he's doing. Meanwhile, Sean Payton's in Denver might have left the New Orleans Saints holding a little bit of the bag, paying for all of the success that he was able to have during his time with Drew Brees and all that stuff. And currently, like I said, the Los Angeles Rams are the current 6th seed entering Sunday with an 8-7 record in the playoffs. If it were to end right here, right now with, obviously it wouldn't, but the Buccaneers, meanwhile, lead the NFC South. They are the 4th seed with the 7-7 record. The New Orleans Saints could not keep up pace with their first game or with their game this week. Suddenly, that Buccaneers-Jaguars game is a whole lot more interesting for the Bucs, because now if they win, they go in with an 8-7 record against the New Orleans Saints, who are 7-8. Next week could clinch the NFC South division because of a win against the Jaguars this weekend. We'll get there to that prediction. Wig, you and I both know about that matchup coming up, so we will talk about that and more coming up on today's episode of Locked On NFL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by DoorDash. Why root for your team on an empty stomach? You wouldn't do it if you're sitting in the stadium. Don't do it sitting in your house or at your watch party. Order on DoorDash and save on football watch party favorites like pizza, wings, sodas, burgers, or even just buns, and get it all delivered without missing the game. Kick back at kickoff with unbeatable deals on everything you need for the watch party or the tailgate. My family has a special Christmas Eve celebration tradition. We get McDonald's for all the kids, but you know something? With the games going on, I don't got to go get it. I don't have to force my wife to go get it. We're just going to DoorDash it, have it dropped right at the house, so everybody is happy, including the guy watching football. Score football season's best deals on groceries, restaurants, retail, and more. All of your favorite restaurants and stores from retail to grocery are on the app, so you can shop everything you need to get game day ready. Get prepared before game day, stock up on your favorite apps, and order all your tailgate gear on DoorDash. Then just get ready to watch the win. Get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order after you download the DoorDash app and enter the promo code LOCKED23. Don't forget that code LOCKED23 for 50% off up to a $10 value on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and spend $15 or more. Subject to change. Terms apply. Thanks again for making Locked On NFL your first listener, your first view today and every day, everydayers. Thanks for coming through, supporting this show and this network as you do. Locked On is launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. The Los Angeles Rams get week 16 going with a win. The New Orleans Saints, unfortunately, the first loser this week. Unfortunate for them, fortunate for a couple of other teams as well, who we will talk about as we get through this program. Now we're going to start our predictions, and we got Saturday NFL football once again coming up this weekend. We're going to kick the predictions off with the Cincinnati Bengals visiting the Pittsburgh Steelers, an NFC North throwdown. 2.5-point favorites are the Cincinnati Bengals. The Pittsburgh Steelers seem to be in a really rough way. What do you think is going to happen in this one?
Well, Mike Tomlin is one of my favorite people in sports, not just the coach. He's one of my favorite people, but it seems like things have gotten a little stale in Pittsburgh and they can't figure it out. So I'm going to go with the Bengals because I trust Lou Anarumo, and I trust the fact that even with the backup quarterback, they're going to be able to beat Pittsburgh. So I'm going with the Bengals.
Yeah, I think just overall, with some of the injuries and everything, obviously both teams are not really firing off at peak levels. But I think the Bengals are a little bit more stable than the Pittsburgh Steelers are. I'm going with the Bengals there as well. The Buffalo Bills, one of the highest, if not the highest spread of the weekend, 12.5-point favorites over the Los Angeles Chargers. Buffalo's on the road, though. Does that make a difference for you in this matchup?
No, they could play on mud. They could play in a figure skating ring. It does not matter. They can play in the desert. Buffalo's going to beat the hell out of Los Angeles because they don't have their quarterback. And then Brandon Staley. I would sometimes have caution and a reason to pause because usually when there's a coaching change, everybody gets all fired up like the Raiders did with Antonio Pierce. This ain't one of those cases, okay? Buffalo is playing for something. They're trying to win the NFCs. Buffalo is going to hammer the Los Angeles Chargers.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it, right? This is a completely different scenario here. The Carolina Panthers at one point looked like a team that wanted to fight. The Las Vegas Raiders last year wanted to fight. The Las Vegas Raiders this year wanted to fight. The Chargers looked dead in the water from top of the staff to bottom of the roster last time we saw them. So I expect the Chargers to fall flat in this one as well. Probably a fairly empty SoFi Stadium for that matchup. Indianapolis Colts are on the road to face the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons need a win to stay alive. They won't be eliminated, but to really stay alive in the NFC South divisional race, they need a win over the Colts. They are favored to win by 2.5. Taylor Heineke, I understand, one of my favorite people in the National Football League, not my favorite quarterback in the National Football League, getting the start. Wig, what happens when the Colts and Falcons face off?
Colts are going to win. Arthur Smith, I kind of like him, but I kind of don't understand what he's doing with his personnel. I usually try to trust coaches that practice and are at the sessions with these guys in the film room. I just don't like they got a couple of top 7, top 8 picks that aren't being utilized correctly, in my opinion. I think the Colts have a lot to play for. They're trying to win the AFC South. They're going to beat Atlanta.
Yeah, I think that's a foregone conclusion as well. Look, Falcons, and anybody can say, national people, talking heads, all that stuff, don't know what they're talking about when it comes to the Atlanta Falcons. I got a good amount of friends that are on the Falcons beat. Trust me, it ain't just the national people. It's just the outside talking this way about Arthur Smith. There's a lot of people confused as to what he's doing as a coach. And
shout out to Aaron Freeman, Locked On Falcons, right?
Locked On Falcons. Aaron Freeman is one of those guys. Green Bay Packers at Carolina Panthers. Packers favored by 4.5 points. Can the Panthers get another win this year?
Not this week. They're not going to get it against Green Bay. I think Green Bay really squandered an opportunity last week to keep themselves relevant and keep themselves in a position to possibly chase a wild card. But with that being said, I do still believe they have enough playmakers and enough guys on defense to beat the Panthers, who have been relatively inconsistent all year, with the exception of the game that they happened to squeeze out last week.
Yeah, speaking of those Atlanta Falcons, Carolina Panthers getting their second win of the season over those Falcons. They got their first win of the season over the Houston Texans, who host the Cleveland Browns. This was supposed to be the Deshaun Watson return revenge game. It would have been Deshaun versus CJ Stroud, the former quarterback versus the maybe rookie of the year, but now it's not that. Cleveland Browns, Houston Texans. Cleveland is favored by 2.5. You got to think it's that defense. Wig, does that defense pull out the win for the Browns?
This is really, really a good game and competitive. Where CJ Stroud is questionable to play. Cleveland, though, has played really good defense, and they found a little bit of rhythm on offense, even without all of their players available to them. I'm going to go with Cleveland here. I know, folks might think I'm biased because I'm going against another AFC South team. I'm not doing that for that reason. I just believe Cleveland, I've watched them play, and Houston has had some highs and then some lows. I think Cleveland has been steady 80-80 all year, even with their injuries, and I think they're going to pull it out.
Yeah, I think Cleveland has been quietly one of the more impressive stories when you look at everything they're dealing with and what they've been able to do. I think the Cleveland Browns pull it off on the road as well. That defense is super scary. Plus, and I will tell you, maybe there is a little bit of bias for me. I got to roll Joe Flacco out for my semifinal competition, my fantasy league. So I might just be trying to speak it into existence here. But I do feel like the Browns are probably going to pull this off. That's actually why I went with Joe, because I think the Browns are going to pull it off. I think he's going to have the opportunity, because I could have gone with Nick Mullins with the Minnesota Vikings. He's a 3-point underdog at home against the Detroit Lions. I could have gone there, but I went with the Browns. Wig, did I make the right decision? Are the Vikings going to pull this thing off, or are the Detroit Lions going to get in the win column?
I think Detroit's going to win it. I trust the team that has their quarterback, the guy that they're used to, the guy that they have been riding with all year. And then I think they have a lot to play for as well, and they want to try to crank it up as we head into the postseason. Minnesota knows what it is. It is what it is. And I just don't think that they have what it takes to beat a team like Detroit at this juncture. Maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago, but not right now.
Yeah, certainly some good things going on for Minnesota, but more good things going on for the Detroit Lions, who would become an 11-win team with a win over the Minnesota Vikings this weekend. I personally had the Detroit Lions winning the NFC North, so I'm pretty proud of myself for that, but I don't know if I had them win in 11, 12 potential games this season. Yeah. That's a little bit more than I anticipated. Next up, Washington Commanders traveling up north for Christmas Eve to face off the New York Giants. Their second game in MetLife. I can tell you, because I cover the Commanders, they do not play well in MetLife. Typically, it's against the New York Giants. So I don't know if the color of the team they're facing is really going to matter. The New York Jets are 3-point favorites. They're playing with a backup quarterback, regardless of what happens with Zach Wilson, which I don't think he's playing. I think it's Trevor Siemian. The Washington Commanders are playing with a first-year starter in Sam Howell that a whole lot of people suddenly have a lot of questions about. Jets have a good defense. Commanders don't have a good defense. Wig, 3 points. Is that fair, or do you think that that one side wins this game by much more than that?
I'm going to go with the Jets, and here's the reason. I kind of look at the units. I look at offense and defense on both sides, and I think the best unit by a long stretch is the New York Jets defense. They're just that much better than any other unit, including their own offense, and then the two offenses, well, the offense and the defense for the other team. So I'm going to go to the team that has the best unit, and I think that is the New York Jets.
Yeah, look, I think we can see the Washington Commanders offense play a little bit better within themselves this week than we've seen them play probably in the last 3 or 4 weeks. But I still think this Jets defense is just too much to try to topple. When you look at the Commanders defense, it's weakness on weakness. When you're talking offense on offense, defensive strengths, the Commanders defense is not their strength. So I think you got to go Jets here if you're wanting to bet with any kind of confidence. So we're going to stop right there, but we got plenty more games coming up to predict heading into the weekend of Week 16, and that's coming up next on Locked On NFL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in North America. We are the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports because it's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks and people like me, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and then watch your winnings roll in. PrizePicks is really simple to play. I can make my picks and submit my entry in less than 60 seconds. I picked my usual trio of players for Thursday Night Football. I went with Saints running back Alvin Kamara to get me more than half a touchdown, Rams running back Kyren Williams to get me more than 109.5 rushing and receiving yards combined, and Rams kicker Lucas Haversek to have more than 7 points kicking. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use the promo code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use the code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Wrapping up this episode of Locked On NFL, we got 8 more games in Week 16 to predict. And if you're wondering, no, my PrizePicks ticket did not win. Haversack came through. Kyren Williams, hey, he still had a great game, but he fell about 5 yards short for me. And Alvin Kamara did not find the end zone because the New Orleans Saints just apparently don't know how to use Alvin Kamara anymore. Wig, the Seattle Seahawks are hoping Drew Lock, Geno Smith, whoever I think is Geno Smith, can figure out how to get a win on the road. Tennessee Titans, 3-point favorite, Seattle Seahawks. So apparently the odds maker is not really, either they're a little bit low on the Eagles or they're not totally sold on the Seahawks beating one of the quote unquote best in the NFC. Who wins this one?
Well, I don't think Will Levis is healthy, and I think if he was healthy, I wouldn't choose him to beat Seattle because Seattle has 2 quarterbacks who they seem to be in a rhythm with each other. Whether Geno plays or Drew Lock, it does not matter. They have the weapons outside. They've invested on the trenches on both offensive and defensive lines. I really believe since Seattle's going to run away with it.
Yeah, I got Seattle on that one too. The next game is the heavyweight matchup of the weekend. It's the best game for you to watch, for everybody to watch. Jacksonville Jaguars at Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm sure there's plenty of you who don't care what happens in this game. But, Wig, this is, like I said, suddenly it's a very big game for the Buccaneers. How big of a game is it for the Jags? The Bucs are favored to win by 3 at home in Ray J.
It's a huge game because if Jacksonville wins, they continue to be tied with Indianapolis. If Indianapolis wins, the difference is they have the tiebreaker because they swept them both times. If they win and Indy loses, that gives them like a 1.5 game lead in the division. Mm-hmm. The problem is I don't think they're going to win. I think they're going to lose by those 3 points that the odds makers have favored. I think the Bucs are going to pull it out because they need to stay ahead of everybody else. And the Jaguars are going to continue their late season slide.
You got the Bucs winning. I got the Bucs winning. I think the Bucs are going to win that one as well. The Arizona Cardinals visit the Chicago Bears. The Bears are 4.5 point favorites. We're going to know 2 things. Do the Bears win? Do the Bears stick with Justin Fields this offseason?
Great question. What I think the answer is it depends on if they make changes in the personnel department. I think the personnel department, if they stand pat, they're going to stick with Justin Fields. I think if they get a new GM, they may move him. And that doesn't mean that I think they're going to draft a quarterback with those first 2 picks. I think they may go best player available and then go after another veteran and just wait down the line. They might try to build that roster and then later add a quarterback. Because the 2 quarterbacks, there's some questions about May and there's some questions about Williams.
Yep.
And I don't know if they're ready to do that until they build a team. So I think they're going to win this game, but I also think that they may get rid of Justin Fields.
You know, people always say, man, you're not going to pick top 5 very often, so you better take a quarterback while you're there. I would say, you know what, you're not going to pick top 5 very often. You better take the best offensive tackle. You better take the best pass rusher. You better take the best playmaker. I mean, there's a lot of players that are important in the NFL today that are going to be in the top 5. If you don't think you're going to be there very often, you might want to take. So I think some decisions have to be made there, certainly for the Chicago Bears. Dallas Cowboys visiting the Miami Dolphins. I need Tyreek Hill to play and play well. They are 1.5 point favorites. Wig, what's going to happen? Am I getting my heart broken here, or are the Dolphins going to pull this out for me?
No, Miami's going to win. Miami only loses to teams that are real physical, and Dallas showed you last week against Buffalo that they're not as physical as they pretend to be. They kind of get out in front of you, and then when they get out in front of you and start scoring points, they unleash their pass rushers. Well, we saw last week they don't have a whole bunch of sand in their pocket. They don't have a whole bunch of hind parts. So we're going with Miami in this game, whether Tyreek plays or not, but I think he will play, and I think they'll put a lot of pressure on the Cowboys, and this will be another chance for Stephen A. Smith to celebrate on social media.
Yeah, my understanding is Tyreek is trending in the right direction. I agree with you. I don't think the Cowboys can win a slugfest. I think they got to win with finesse, and this isn't going to be a finesse game. New England Patriots on the road to face the Denver Broncos. The Patriots are a mess. Looks like their coaches, the most legendary coaching run in history is going to end. The Denver Broncos, I guess, are on an upward swing. 6.5 point favorites. Wig, what happens?
Denver, because even though they lost last week and it kind of, ruined their chances to even get into the playoffs, I still think Sean Payton wants to end this season with a bang and make people start thinking about next year. And then New England's an absolute mess. They don't really have a quarterback. They have a really good defense, but that's about it. I think Denver's going to win the game.
Yeah, I got Denver as well. The Kansas City Chiefs at home against the Raiders. The Raiders, I mean, Antonio Pierce, if you want to keep that job, you beat the Chiefs in Arrowhead. That's a big way to do it, but they are 10-point underdogs. The Chiefs are favored to win this game. Do you think Antonio Pierce has enough juice to make this happen?
Absolutely not. He could probably do it against maybe 75% of the teams in the league because of the fact that he's taken over. He's a player's coach. He's a former player that they all love. But all of that comes to an end when you face a guy like Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, and they have a little bit that they want to play for too. I think Kansas City wins the game.
Yeah, I've got Kansas City there as well. The Philadelphia Eagles need a win in a huge way. The New York Giants would love to play Grinch on Christmas afternoon. The Eagles are favored by 13.5 points, though. Is there a way the Giants can pull off this upset?
I don't think they pull off an upset, but if you take that point spread, I think you take the Giants and the points because they do play really, really good defense, and Philly has struggled a little bit offensively.
No.
I believe Philly's going to win this game, and they're going to win it going away, but I think that the Giants may get some cheap late points and keep that thing under 13 points.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think if you're going to bet on this, you go money line, unless you're taking the Giants with the points. I would not take the Eagles by 13.5 in that one. The Baltimore Ravens wrap up things on the road against the San Francisco 49ers. It's a Super Bowl past rematch. Of course, the players are different. The coaches, well, at least one of the head coaches is different. The Niners, 5.5-point favorites. Best team in the NFL, Wig. Do they beat the Ravens at home?
They don't. I think Baltimore serves everybody a little bit of dose of reality that they can match their physicality. They can also match their ability to be dynamic offensively. And I think Baltimore actually pulls a little bit of surprise. In the NFL, we always think that we know the team that's going to win it all, right? Remember when Denver was supposed to just beat Seattle and Peyton Manning, they scored all those points and then they got into the Super Bowl and got blown out by almost 35. So here's what happens. I think Baltimore tries to serve notice a little bit that not so fast, my friends. We have been physical for a very long time. And the things that San Francisco does, which are things that we all love, Baltimore does them too. And Baltimore is also used to teams that do that because they play in that rugged division. San Francisco doesn't really play in a division where they are tested every single week physically. I think Baltimore is, and I think Baltimore pulls this off.
Yeah, look, hey, the Baltimore Ravens win this game. They have the best record in the National Football League. And nobody.
This is a rematch of that Super Bowl too when those lights went off. You know what I'm saying? And I think Baltimore, even though they beat San Francisco then, I think people are favoring the 49ers, but Baltimore is going to be like, nah, we got this.
All right, so that's all the games. If this happens in the AFC, the Baltimore Ravens, again, are the number 1 seed. The Dolphins got the 2, the Chiefs got the 3, the Colts got the 4. The Browns and the Bengals are pulling up the rear of the Buffalo Bills, squeaking in at number 7. Meanwhile, in the NFC, the San Francisco 49ers, Eagles, Lions, and Bucks would be your 1 through 4 division winners. And then the Rams and Seahawks are your 6th and 7th team, with the Dallas Cowboys being the 5th in the NFL draft order. For those of you who are already doing mock drafts, the Carolina Panthers will hold the number 1 overall pick, which, of course, belongs to the Chicago Bears. New England Patriots would be number 2, Cardinals 3, Commanders 4, and the New York Giants number 5. So we will see how all of that unfolds as Week 16 gets going. Once Week 16 is up, make sure you come back to find Kevin Ostreicher of Locked On Ravens hosting Locked On NFL Monday, and then, of course, all week long. We've also got Locked On NFL Kickoff Live happening at 2 p.m. Eastern on every Locked On NFL YouTube page. So make sure you're subscribed, auto downloads, all that good stuff for your second view or listen of the day. Check out Locked On Jags, Locked On Commanders, or Locked On Bucks, or just stay right here and head on over to Locked On Sports Today, the first ever 24/7 sports streaming channel on YouTube. As always, thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen, your first view today and every day. Thanks as always for coming through and supporting us. For Tony Wiggins, I'm David Harrison. We'll see you right back here next Friday for another episode of Locked On NFL, the last Thursday night post-game Locked On NFL of the season, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.